Good evening, I'm Ryan Doyle in for Ezra Levant. As the old saying goes, it's all fun and games until someone loses an eye. Although in the context of the Pan Am Games, the line should read, it's all fun and games until politicians rob us blind. Back in 2009, the City of Toronto and the Southern Ontario region were announced as the winning bid for the 2015 Games. The city and region had lost 2 Olympic bids, 2 Commonwealth Games bids in Hamilton, and couldn't even get a bid for the World Expo off the ground. So desperate to get an event, politicians decided to open the public purse and put together a no-holds-barred offering for the Olympics' ugly little cousin. The 2-week games, held every 4 years and open to athletes from across the Americas and the Caribbean, were supposed to bring badly needed sports infrastructure to the region with minimal cost to the taxpayer. At least that's what we were told. However, once the region was announced the winner and the collective backpatting died down, it didn't take long for everyone to see a ballooning bottom line. First, there was shock after Sports Minister Michael Chan said the $1.4 billion budget for TO 2015 does not include $10 million for the provincial Pan Am Secretariat or the $709 million being spent on housing for the athletes. Of course, the governing Liberals chalked this up to a misunderstanding of the numbers and once again hyped up the return that this type of investment will bring communities, which is the political equivalent of saying, hey, look over there, and running away. Then we started to hear about a culture of entitlement that was beginning to brew. CEO Ian Troop of the TO 2015 bid, who was paid $477,000, billed taxpayers for petty things, like 91 cents for a parking spot, while other Pan Am officials billed taxpayers for cups of tea. Following this revelation, Ian Troop was shown the door and was replaced by a government bureaucrat, Deputy Health Minister Saad Rafi. Despite Troop being paid a cash severance of more than $478,000 and over $27,000 in retirement benefits, the province continued to maintain that everything was A-OK. 2 other Pan Am execs, they were let go to the tune of $500,000, and still the province reassured us. We got word that Patchy the Porcupine, the official mascot of Toronto's 2015 Pan Am Games, will cost taxpayers $383,000, which I'm told is an astronomical cost when compared to any other sports mascot in the world. And yes, I realize that most of you have yet to see a porcupine roaming the streets of Toronto. All the misspent money aside, however, the biggest headache of these games may be the announcement this week from the Liberal Transportation Minister. Those living in Southern Ontario this week were told that every major highway through the Toronto area will have a dedicated lane for Pan Am Games officials, media, and athletes this summer. Motorists will only be allowed to access the high occupancy vehicle lanes if there are 3 or more occupants in the vehicle. This in a city where congestion and traffic chaos have become the norm, where taxpayers wait hours in traffic during rush hour to see their families. When pressed on the issue, the minister responded that he was not worried about a driver rebellion, proving how out of touch that this government has become. It also shows the downside of hosting these games. It's far greater than any upside a politician can promise. Yes, the Southern Ontario region will benefit from new transportation, aquatic centers, and sports stadiums, but it will end up costing you extra time on your commute and hundreds of millions of dollars more in wasted tax money. The time has come for the organizations that run these games, whether it's the Olympics or Pan Am Games, to pick one city on the planet and make it the permanent host. After Oslo became the 4th city this year to withdraw from the official 2022 bidding process, many argued that the Olympics find a permanent home. Montreal spent 30 years paying off its debt from hosting the 1976 Summer Olympics. Greece spent $16 billion on the 2004 Games in Athens, piling up debts that contributed to the collapse of its economy 6 years later, even as Olympic venues rotted in disuse. If we don't make this change, we will continue to have politicians promising us innovation and infrastructure at an astronomical cost. When Toronto originally won this bid, David Peterson, the former Liberal Premier, said that winning the Games helps Toronto shed its loser mentality, and that the Games give governments a firm deadline to complete promised projects, including transit improvements, the rail link to the Pearson Airport, but it's an expensive ego boost. Also, a sad state when the only time government gets serious about productivity isn't for citizens, but games, athletes, and the perception of a well-run province.
The security budget has increased from the original bid of 121.9 to 247.9. We do believe that TO 2015 missed an opportunity to reduce their costs and mitigate risk by not procuring their private security earlier.
Yeah, there you have it, the Auditor General warning us even more about the Pan Am Games and the money being spent, this time on security. The list just goes on and on and on. Adrian Batra is here to talk about it. Adrian, for me, you look at something like this and you just wonder where it's going to end.
Well, that's the problem with this, is because too often, as you know, you laid it out in your monologue, taxpayers, be it in Toronto, be it in Vancouver, Montreal, anywhere around the world. The previous Pan Am Games were in Guadalajara, not a place where you'd think that money is flowing in the streets. You know, their taxpayers were held hostage by this sort of stuff. Happens over and over and over again. The challenge with the use of the security right now, the Liberals have an easy scapegoat. They will say, and as the Premier did, I'm not going to put any athletes' lives, anybody's lives at risk, just, you know, for a few $100 million here or there. But to me, that's not the answer. The challenge has been from the get-go. From day one, since the Pan Am Games were announced, previous Premier Dalton McGuinty, they have had time after time a challenge with the funding. They haven't been forthcoming with taxpayers. They haven't accounted for everything. I think that this is, you know, we've racked up so many billion-dollar boondoggles with this Liberal government. This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar one. And all the discussions that we're having about transit infrastructure, fixing our roads, fixing our commute times, none of that will take place at least for another, I'd say 7-8 years, because we're going to have a massive debt to pay off.
See, the problem I have with this, though, is politicians, and they do it in every country, in every jurisdiction that even talks about hosting Pan Am Games or Olympic Games, they say, well, this infrastructure wouldn't be built. We wouldn't be paying for this if it weren't for the Pan Am Games. Is it not the politician's job to create a budget and figure out how they're going to pay for those line items?
Well, I would say, well, what are we paying our taxes for? What are we going to be we're going to potentially face a whole new host of revenue tools from the Liberal government already. So, yeah, it's a bit of a disingenuous argument to say, look, we're going to get these fabulous games here, and all of a sudden, we're going to get the sports arenas. We're going to get the pools. We're going to get these upgrades. It's not even with Liberal governments. Successive governments have done this over and over again. Rome is burning underneath our feet while they're fiddling. And I'm talking about...
Or at the very least, Greece.
Well, sure. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm talking about other things, even at the municipal level. How many times have your viewers heard, oh, we need to increase water and sewer rates by 9, 15, 20% over the next 5 years because the pipes are corroding? Well, you have to wonder, well, what am I paying for? And the same argument should be made when it comes to major infrastructure projects and hiding behind the guise of a massive games like Pan Am. And this won't be the end of it. Because so many other countries are rejecting 2022 for the Olympics, how many times has Toronto tried to get the Olympics?
Too many.
Exactly. So who knows what will happen in the course of the next year, another bid coming forward, what that could potentially cost us. And no one should buy the argument, well, the infrastructure's here because we had the Pan Am Games. It's a much larger scale. I think this is just the beginning of the slippery slope for the spending that we're seeing on the security costs doubling. There's going to be more to come. And the fact is, Brian, we're stuck with it. The games are coming. We have to accept it, and these guys have a majority.
Would a permanent host for these games, whether it's the Pan Am Games, the Parapan Games, the Olympics, or what have you, would that not solve this problem, though, and not let government have this excuse?
Yeah, I think that would be a very logical thing. But don't forget that those bidding committees, and I'm talking about at the IOC, at the Pan Am level, like those executives that come together, that's their business. You know, it's their business to be wined and dined, and for host cities, potential host cities, to bring them and show them and roll out the red carpet for them and say, look at what we can do for you. So they would be loathed to have the idea of one city. You would have an extraordinary amount of resistance from that, because it's quite a lucrative business on the other side for them to have travel the world and do these things. I think that it would take an extraordinary movement from the public in order to push these people that are thrusting these games upon us to make that change. I just don't know if there's a concerted effort to do so.
No, and I think the problem is going to be getting those executives away from that public purse and getting the politicians accountable, holding them accountable to the promises they make without having the umbrella of an Olympics or a Pan Am Games or any of those kind of things in front of them. Those are scapegoats, those are crutches, those are excuses, and those are excuses that need to end. Adrienne Batcher, thank you so much.
Thanks.